Welcome to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network with your hostess, Jen Josey. Join like-minded real estate investors and accelerate your business towards greatness. You will hear step-by-step strategies for success, interviews with real estate rock stars, and we will dig deep into past projects where we bear it all, including the good, the bad, and some just plain ugly. So get excited. Here's the bestower of badassery herself, the real Jen Josey. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, and welcome back. I'm Jen Josey, creator of RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Whoop, whoop. On today's episode, we have a guest that will be sharing their badassery. But before we begin, here's today's badassery bestowment, my little badass gift to you. Today's topic is dealing with difficult contractors. If you've been in real estate for more than 5 minutes, you know that working with contractors can sometimes feel like herding cats, blindfolded and in a thunderstorm. But here's the thing, you don't have to let difficult contractors derail your project or your mindset. Here's how to keep your cool and your project on track. Number 1, start with crystal clear expectations. Before anyone swings a hammer, get everything in writing, your scope of work, your timeline, your payment schedule. Clarity up front saves you headaches later. Number 2, communicate early and often. Regular check-ins, calls, texts, site visits keeps everyone honest and accountable. If something feels off, address it quickly. Don't let little issues become big problems. Number 3, document everything. Take photos, save messages, and keep your paperwork organized. If things get rocky, you'll have the receipts, literally and figuratively. Number 4, know when to cut ties. If your contractor's work or attitude isn't up to par, don't be afraid to move on. Protecting your investment is more important than sparing someone's feelings. And number 5, most important, reward the rock stars. When you find a contractor who delivers, pay promptly, show appreciation, and build that long-term relationship. Good contractors are worth their weight in gold. So RAIN Nation, remember, difficult contractors are a reality, but you're the one running the show. Set boundaries, stay organized, and don't let anyone mess with your investment or your badassery. Stay sharp and keep leveling up. Now on to today's episode of the Real Estate Investor Growth Network podcast. Today's guest is Neil Henderson, a professional real estate investor, co-host of the Truly Passive Income podcast, and general partner at Nomad Capital, a self-storage syndication firm based in Wilmington, North Carolina. Neil's journey into real estate started with house hacking his own home in Las Vegas, a move that accelerated his family's path to financial independence and ignited his passion for the FIRE movement. After a long career as a defense contractor, he's since played a key role in over $75 million in commercial real estate deals and helped grow a portfolio of more than 3,000 storage units. Neil brings unique insights on building wealth through creative investing, strategies, and syndication. It's my pleasure to have him on the show, so welcome, Neil Henderson. Hello. You are just a couple hours from me.
I know. We're right down the road from each other. Jen, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I've never been ushered onto a podcast with applause before. You know, it's usually boos.
I can see if I can make that happen. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, yeah.
It is such a pleasure to have you on the show. So give us a little background on you. And I especially want to hear, you are an actor. I want to hear about that.
Oh, God. Okay, well, now we're going way back. So, you know, I had a very traditional transition from actor into defense contractor. It's that old tale, you know, everyone knows. I was an incredibly shy kid in high school. Went away to college in Reno. and was studying to do photojournalism, and
Wow.
mainly studied beer and partying my first year. And so I flunked out my first year in college, and but went back home, licked my wounds, eventually got back up to Reno to go to school. And at one point, my sister was an actress, and she had always been encouraging me to take an acting class. And I was terrified of public speaking, being up, having people look at me, period. But I took a class and really loved it. Eventually got over the fear, started auditioning for some plays and things like that in Reno, and eventually um, became a pretty regular lead actor there in the repertory company there in Reno.
Wow.
And then transitioned into studying theater at the University of Nevada, and all of a sudden started getting great grades, started getting scholarship offers and things like that, which just shows that, you're probably going to do a lot better in school if you're studying something you really enjoy.
That is true.
And then one like January 1993, my sister, who was living in San Francisco at the time, said, "Hey, if you really want to do this acting thing, you should probably go to like a really good school." And she said, "There's a school down here called the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, which is kind of the Juilliard.
Wow.
It was the Juilliard of the West." I had no idea anything about it, but I went down on Valentine's Day, 1993, took my girlfriend down there, auditioned. Um, and that summer, I got a letter that said, "Hey, we didn't accept you, but we want to put you on a waiting list." I was like, "Okay, well, that's cool, whatever." And then I went about my merry way, started my next semester of college in 93, and then literally got a call one day and they said, "Hey, we had somebody drop out, and we want to see if you want to come join the class, and you've got a week to get here." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I was talked to my sister, talked to my family, and they said, "Well, you should do it." So I packed up my bags, dropped out of school at the University of Nevada, Reno, and went off to American Conservatory Theater. Studied there for 2 years in their advanced training program. Graduated in 95, went down to LA, made a go of it as an actor for about 8 years.
Nice.
You know, was in some independent film that never saw the light of day, had some, stuff go to Sundance Film Festival. Um, but eventually got, once I hit 30 and was sort of, tired of working in jobs that I hated in order to have time to go and audition for an under five on Saved by the Bell. I was kind of like, this is not all that artistically fulfilling. Um, Very weird segue. During that period, I was doing voiceover. And in the late 90s, I started doing classified voiceover. So I got a security clearance. And then September 11th happened. And all of a sudden, that security clearance became very valuable. And at the time, I was looking for kind of a way out of acting in LA. And I had a job offer from a company back in Las Vegas that said, "Hey, listen, you're not exactly qualified for what we want to do, but you have a security clearance and we can train you." And it was actually easier for them to bring me on and let me learn on the job than it was to try and hire somebody who could do the job and then get a clearance at the time, because it was like a 2-year wait to get clearances. So that's that's the weird like way that I went from acting into a defense contractor.
Wow. Well, I have a little bit of the acting bug myself.
Yeah.
I was Sister Pitch Pipe in The Sound of Music. Do you remember that
Uh,
role?
I
There,
I
it was
don't. I mean, I
created for
love.
me.
Yeah. I love Sound of Music. So but
Well, I was a music major, and so I played in a lot of orchestra pits, but they needed more nuns on the stage, and so they put me up there with the
it's
pitch
great.
pipe to do it. So it was typecasting clearly. So, um, what a fun background! I love it. So, how did you get into real estate, and did it start with the house hacking, or tell me about that?
Kind of. I'll say that I became an accidental landlord and a failed landlord. I bought my first house in Las Vegas in February of 2005. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath condo that had doubled in value in a year. It was a year old. Should have been my first warning sign. and bought it, moved into it. It was a great place to live. And I think I bought it at, I think 210. Eventually, I think it rose in value in like, a year and a half to 275. And then when I short sold it in 2013 or 2014, it was $60,000.
Oh,
So, that kind of shaped my real estate journey. I knew nothing about real estate investing. Knowing what I know now, I could have probably navigated that in a lot better way. But I just, at the time, was like, I got to get this thing off my plate. But at the time, I had bought I had gotten married. My wife and I were wanting to have kids. So we ended up buying a house at the bottom of the market in Vegas. Much smarter real estate move. And it had a little guest house on the front of it. Or not even, I'm just a guest house. It was just a detached bedroom at the front of the house. And it had its own bathroom and all that. And for about a nanosecond, it was going to be my ultimate man cave and office. And my wife was like, no, no, no. That's going to be our guest room for when our friends come to visit, and specifically my in-laws and things like that. And we appointed it like a very nice little hotel room. We put in a little mini fridge, a little coffee bar, a little microwave, and just decorated it really, really nicely. And that was summer of 2013. Christmas Day, 2013, I remember this. My mom handed me this newspaper article about a company called Airbnb.
yep.
And she says, I think that maybe this would be something you could do with that little guest house at the front of your property when you're not using it. And I was like, yeah, whatever, Mom. But my mom is one of the smartest business people I've ever known. Not bad for a woman who just had a high school education. And she had always been sort of putting business ideas in front of me. And this was the first one that I found. I was like, all right, I'll try it. So January of 2014, I went out. I'm a photographer. I went out, I took some photos of it, put a listing up on Airbnb, and 48 hours later, we had our first booking. And from that point, from January of 2014 until March of 2020, when COVID shut us down, we were 65% occupied, and we had one of the highest rated listings in Las Vegas. And that was kind of my intro into real estate investing.
Got it.
And it was, I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is so easy. And once we kind of figured out how to sort of systematize it and do it like that, it was really the easiest money I've ever made in my life. And that was kind of how I got into real estate.
So why was it shut down in 2020?
COVID, March 2020, COVID hit. We would have been shut. It was actually two things. One, the short-term rental regulations in Las Vegas had changed from the time that we started
Gotcha.
to when we got shut down. So even if COVID hadn't shut us down, the city would have shut us down because they had regulations had changed. Las Vegas got very hostile to short-term rentals. There's a huge casino lobby or resort lobby there. They don't really love people not staying in their hotels. And so we got a double whammy. We had our HOA come in and shut us, send us a cease and desist. And then we had the county come in and give us a cease and desist. And then 14 days later, COVID shut down the entire city. So it was going to shut us down no matter what.
Wow.
But one of the things that did for us was we were paying our mortgage plus. We were getting paid to live there. And I was rolling over the extra money we were making during that 5 years into paying down our mortgage. So we had a massive amount of equity in that property. At that time, we'd also bought at the bottom of the market. We'd had a lot of appreciation. So May of 2020, unemployment in Las Vegas is 25%.
Wow.
COVID, every casino in Las Vegas is shut down. I was like, I've seen this movie before and I don't want to ride this equity down. So we immediately put it on the market and sold it in June of 2020 because I was worried that we were going to lose all that equity.
Right.
The market did the exact opposite. I'm still glad. I mean, it's all right. I'm still glad we left a lot of money on the table, but I'm still glad we did what we did because we are where we are now. We ended up moving. My dad died the day that COVID became a thing, March 18th. My mom was a widow. We were, so we sold our house and we moved in with my mom, and formed our own little COVID pod, and kind of sat back and reevaluated, tried to decide what we're going to do next. I had been sort of building to moving to North Carolina to be near my business partner. And that was kind of, that was our kind of a reset.
I was going to ask, how did you end up in Wilmington? So how did you find your business partner over here?
At a real estate conference in 2017, I was at the Best Ever conference I had no business being at. The only thing I had was a little short-term rental house hack going. And if anyone's ever been to the Best Ever conference, it's for commercial real estate syndicators. But a friend of mine talked me into going there. I saw a man named Scott Myers give a presentation on self-storage investing. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. I'd never thought self-storage, people invest in self-storage. And then literally after that presentation, I went down to the lunch buffet, and I sat down at this lunch buffet table with my now partner, Eric Hemingway, and his daughter, Maggie. And he was telling a story about how he had built his first self-storage facility from the ground up in 2008, and then gone and lived on a sailboat for 3.5 years with his family in the Mediterranean.
Wow.
And I was like, I need to get to know this man. Now it was a much more complicated story than that, but that's when Eric's telling that story, which is a very popular story because I've seen him tell it, we just connected. We hung out the rest of that conference. He invited me. He's like, hey, if you ever come out to Wilmington, look me up. And I took that as an invitation. On Memorial Day that year, I told my wife, hey, we're going to go, you want to take a 3-day weekend away from our newborn baby, to Wilmington, North Carolina? And she's like, sure. And so our first trip away as a couple after our son had been born was to Wilmington, North Carolina, to hang out with Eric and, have him drive us around and show him all of the different projects that he was working on. We stayed in touch. I was trying to move in, get started in self-storage. I ended up starting to raise some capital for some multifamily syndications. I kept telling Eric, hey man, you really want to do this self-storage stuff big, you should syndicate them. And he's like, no, I'm not ready yet. And he was smart. He built up a portfolio of about 4 facilities before he finally came to me and said, all right, I think I'm ready. And that was kind of what started it.
What a fun journey you had. So let's get into this whole self-storage strategy for building wealth. So explain how it works. Why is it a good investment for the listeners?
Yeah. So self-storage it's a commercial real estate asset, just like multifamily, just like industrial retail. Anybody who, is not familiar with syndication is when you take a pool of passive investors and you put them together to purchase a property that would be larger than they could otherwise take on themselves, with the expertise of a sponsor, a professional sponsor. It's not a joint venture. It's very specifically not a joint venture. And the sponsor, the limited partners, the passive investors, basically get to use their capital to lean on the experience and the time of a professional sponsor. And anytime you drive by a multifamily property, a retail center, an office building, chances are it's probably owned by a syndication. It's more than likely not owned by one person. So just let me get that
well, I have to commend you because I think that's the best definition of syndication I have heard on my 281 episodes so far here. So that was so well said. All right, keep going. That was awesome.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate that. Self-storage is now it's become a very mature asset class. It used to be kind of the redheaded stepchild of commercial. Sorry. Hey, I'm kind of a redhead. I come from a family of redheads. I love them. But it was always kind of like, if you can picture self-storage, most people think of the low slung buildings, drive up storage in kind of an industrial part of town. creaky old doors. You go in there, dirty, ugly, but it has been a very resilient asset class in up markets and down markets, because it's kind of a trauma and transition business, but it also works really well in good times. So storage, literally all you're doing is you're renting people a box of air. There's no tenants, there's no trash, there's no toilets, there's no plumbing. There's usually not even electricity in the unit that the person can access, because we've learned that if you do that, people will undo the bulb, and they will put in a plug, and they will live in the unit. It's a very simple business model. You have month-to-month leases. You don't have 12-month leases. You literally, when someone moves out, you go in, you sweep out the unit, and you've got it ready for the next tenant. If someone doesn't pay, you don't have to do an eviction. It's literally just you overlock the unit. And it's different in different states. There's, comes to a period. Sometimes it's, 15 days. Other times it's maybe even 90 days, where you can then auction off their goods to, recoup your losses. Now, you're never probably going to make that money back, but you don't have to go through a lengthy eviction process. So it's a very simple business model. It's getting more complicated as technology has kind of evolved. But that's at its basis, that's what makes it good. It's also tends to have a lower expense ratio than other commercial real estate asset classes. In multifamily and residential real estate, if you know this, typically about 50% of your expenses are going to go to 50% of your income, not including debt service, is going to go to other expenses, CapEx, repairs, things like that. In self-storage, it's more like 35%. Sometimes, and then oftentimes, the longer you own a facility, we've got facilities where the expense ratio is 20%.
Wow.
So that's where they start really, the longer you own a facility, a lot of times it starts printing money. And I'll shut up there and let you ask any follow-up questions.
So what are your expenses? Do you have like on-site management? Is it automated? How does that work?
It varies. Most facilities will have an on-site manager. It's becoming more common to have remote facilities. You're going to have electricity. Your biggest expense is going to be insurance and taxes. Then probably payroll if you've got an on-site manager. If you own the facility and you're not managing it yourself, you may have a third-party management company. That's going to be the next expense. And then you've got electricity, you've got phone, internet, various things like that. Now with technology, you're starting to get some technology services that are taking their cut, website, things like that. And so it really, the big thing is you're not dealing with, you don't have water, you don't have, other than maybe a bathroom on site,
right?
You don't have those electricity, you don't have cable, and all that stuff that a lot of residential real estate comes with.
I'm sure there's like creative ways to maximize income at a storage facility, like parking. Well, in Wilmington, for example, where you are, people need places to park their boats. And so is that a way to expand it? What other things can you do to increase income coming in?
Yeah, there's a lot of dials that you can turn, and that's one of the beautiful things about commercial real estate. And I can't remember this man's name. I wish I could give him credit for this, but I heard him talk about the power of commercial real estate comes in being able to increase your revenue by $1. And the example he uses, he tells his kids to go out into a parking lot and says, "Find me $1." And the kid's like, "Yeah, whatever, Dad." So they go out and they will scour the parking lot for $1. And then he comes back and says, "Okay, now here's the value of that." In commercial real estate, if you figured out a way to make an extra $1 of income, either by increasing your revenue or lowering your expenses in a month, and track that over 12 months, you've got $12. Now divide that by a 5% cap rate. you have now turned that 12 extra dollars per year you're earning into $240 of value.
Nice.
Now spread that across 500 units, make it $10, and now you start to really see the power of commercial real estate. In self-storage, you can, unfortunately, they're month-to-month leases. So often anybody who has rented a self-storage facility in the last 10 years has probably experienced this. You'll have a pretty low rate when you move in. And a lot of times they will very aggressively raise your rents within 3 to 6 months. But I mean, it's usually maybe like 10%. And that 10% is usually not enough at, let's say, $110 a month, it's an extra $11, is not usually enough to make someone go, oh God, I'm going to go get the U-Haul and I'm going to pack up all my stuff and I'm going to move it down the street.
Interesting.
And so that's really a lot of the business model. And a lot of times self-storage facilities, they want you to move out because they're just going to rent it to somebody at a higher rate when you move out. And chances are, if you try and move down the street, the self-storage facility down the street is going to do the same thing to you. So that's one way, is literally just rate increases. We can very quickly, we can change it. The only commercial asset that can change rates faster is hotels and leisure, because they literally have a nightly rate. So we can very quickly adjust based on what the market is doing, what inflation is doing. We can lower our rates to, get people in and then raise them. You can sell insurance. Like oftentimes we make people, because your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover your property. Our insurance is not going to cover your property. And we say, hey, listen, if you're going to store your stuff here, you have to buy insurance. And we take a cut of that. It's like maybe $5 a month, but divide that by a 5 cap, and that's a lot of money. So it's just various things you can do. Like you said, parking. It's just, there's so many different dials you can turn.
What's the craziest thing that you have found in one of these auctions? That's what I want to find out.
I'm not usually not anything of value, really. I can't speak from experience because I'm not on that asset management side so much. I will say that, the saddest thing we've ever seen, we've had somebody OD in one of our units. Yeah.
Yikes.
In Wilmington. And that's a sad, had to pay for some therapy for that manager who found that dead body.
That's awful. Well, how does Nomad Capital fit into this whole situation here?
Yeah. So Nomad Capital, we're the syndication company. We're vertically integrated company. We're 3 companies kind of all under one roof here in Wilmington, North Carolina. We got Nomad Capital, which gets the debt, raises the money, finds the buildings and things like that. And then we've got Elm Builders, which is our in-house construction company. They do all the build outs, things like that. And then we've got City Storage Management, which manages all of our facilities. We do self-storage, but we do it with a little bit of a twist. We've done everything from ground up development to operational turnaround to expansion. But the strategy that we really love is conversions. We take old big box buildings, old vacant mills,
Kmart's.
Warehouses, Kmart's. We've
Yes.
done a couple of Kmart's, a couple of grocery stores, furniture marts, hosiery factories, things like that. And we convert them to self-storage. Now, why would we do that? Well, one, a lot of times they're already zoned commercial, so we don't have to go through rezoning and things like that.
Smart.
It's already permitted by by right. A lot of times we're able to buy these buildings for below replacement cost. And then we're able to convert them into self-storage within about 12 months. So from the time that we buy it to the time that it opens as a self-storage facility is about 12 to 18 months max. If you and I were to go out and build a ground up self-storage facility, the average time from acquisition to opening is 2 years and 10 months right now. And during that time, you're either paying debt, you're paying for the loan on the land if you've acquired that acquired it that way. You're having to do grading, you're doing permitting, you're doing infrastructure and things like that. All that for us is already there. And then on top of that, it would, if we're going to do ground up development, it's going to cost us on average about $120 a square foot, sometimes 130 to build a ground up self-storage facility. And that does not include the cost of the land.
Okay.
So you're talking probably $150 a square foot. Our last 9 projects, we've gotten them from soup to nuts for $65 a square foot. And that includes the land, the construction, everything. So we're almost half the cost and in a third of the time. And that time is a huge thing right now, because you got to realize, once you get a loan to acquire a building, you're now burning through your interest reserves, your investor capital, all of that. And so that speed and that lower cost is really what is really kind of for us where the magic happens.
Gotcha. So as a syndication company, you are finding, the limited partners.
Ugly ducklings.
Well, no, but I'm sorry, as far as like
Gotcha.
People with their finances, but do
Correct.
you help, someone who wants to get into this industry set up their syndication, or you just do it for your own buildings?
We only do it for our own buildings.
That's
the people we're mainly working with are retail investors. Most of our early investors were doctors, ER doctors, cardiologists, old business owners, active real estate investors who don't want to be active anymore. I don't know if you listeners know this, but real estate is not really a passive strategy. That's kind of the joke of our podcast, Truly Passive Income.
Truly passive. I was
yeah,
like, you're
truly
right.
passive. Yeah. Anybody who's, flipped a house or managed a rental property knows it's not passive. Sorry, I'll shut up there.
No, but so Nomad Capital, you are looking for people. So if there's listeners, and do they have to be accredited? What's the starting point if they want to invest and park their money with you? How does that look for someone who wants to invest with you?
Yeah, so we operate under SEC rules, which is 506, the Reg D 506, either 506B or 506C. 506B stands for, we call that your bros, which is kind of your close friends and family, people you already know,
Gotcha.
Meaning that you can take non-accredited investors, but you can't generally solicit. C stands for the crowd. You can go out, you can generally solicit. I can put up a billboard and says, hey, invest here. I can advertise on Facebook, but the rule is that we can only take accredited investors. We have previously worked with both. We've started offering as a 506B with just non-accredited investors, and then transitioned to 506C. Going forward, unfortunately, we're just going to do 506C because it has just become a little bit of a paperwork and timing nightmare for us to do that transition.
Got it.
And it's typically a $50,000 minimum.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How do they earn money off that? So somebody has $50K and they want to park it with you. What does it look like their interest coming in?
Yeah. So our deals are development deals. We have every once in a while we'll come to somebody. I talk to investors every day, and somebody will say, well, listen, I'm looking to try and replace my income. I'm retiring. I want some money. I want some income coming in to plus up my retirement. And it's also got a growth factor. And I tell them, we're not the offering for you. These are development deals. It only takes us about 12 to 18 months to build these out. But then when it opens, it's an empty self-storage facility with no income. And then we have to then lease it up to positive cash flow before we can start paying distributions. Our offerings are typically a growth play. You're typically looking at anywhere from a 5 to 7 year hold, where we're going to take your $50,000 and we're going to double it or more in 5 years or less, or maybe even 7 years, triple your money. But it is patient money. You have to be. We're not able to pay distributions. It's very, we would love to be able to do that. We are exploring some other debt offerings where we may bring in investors as debt and offer immediate cash flow. But most of the facilities, the buildings that we're buying don't have any cash flow on them. Although we have a few right now that have secondary commercial tenants on them that do have some cash flow, but usually that's just paying our debt service while we build out the facility and then lease it up.
What a system you all have going here. So what is this FIRE movement that I mentioned in your intro? What does FIRE stand for?
Financial independence, retire early. I first became aware of it even before I learned about real estate. And it was, there's a very famous advocate. There's a lot of people that are champions of this movement. The biggest one I would say that people may know is a man named Mr. Money Mustache. And he's got a website called Mr. Money Mustache. And I can't remember what his real name is. But essentially what it's saying is that most Americans' idea of retirement and financial freedom is that you work for 40 odd years in some job and you save, let's say 10% of your income. And then at age 65, you've built up a large enough nest egg that you can then stop working and retire early.
And
retire.
then die. And then die.
And then die, hopefully live another 20 years with, a good health span that you're still able to travel and do that. The financial independence, retire early kind of says, well, you're giving up a lot of your best years during that time. What if you, really aggressively save and live on less, which then just allows you to move that retirement window up to an earlier time, and there's people who really do this aggressively. And obviously this works better for somebody who is maybe a high earner already, a tech professional, things like that. It's really hard for somebody making $50,000 a year, but I've heard stories of people doing that. They're like, listen, I make $50,000 a year. I only need $25,000 a year to live on. I save $25,000 a year. And when you're doing that, you can very quickly build up a very large nest egg that would then allow you to retire early. Now, I'm not retired. I have not achieved financial independence, but I have kept my lifestyle costs low enough, and I built up enough cash flowing assets from rental properties and short-term rentals and my house hacking that I was able to leave my defense contracting job and come join a self-storage syndication startup, had no salary for 3 years. And I was able to survive and basically I didn't retire. I just changed careers. And that's one of the wonderful things about the FIRE movement is retirement looks different for everybody. I think most people think of retirement as that I'm going to just sit on the beach and drink pina coladas. I think that's a great way to be dead within 10 years. And bored. And,
yes.
And so I think what a lot of people are doing now is they're getting to the point where now they just have optionality. You now don't need to work in that job that maybe you like, but now you can maybe go out and leave a safe, secure defense contracting job to go join a self-storage syndication startup and live at the beach in North Carolina. And that's kind of my interpretation of the FIRE movement and how I've used it.
Very nice. So what is your top, this is a written question here, so I want to make sure I nail this, but what is your top advice for busy families who want to start investing, but they feel stretched thin, especially in this world that we live in these days? So what, are there any habits or mindsets that have helped families achieve financial freedom, maybe?
Well, the best example I can use is my own, and that is house hacking.
And you're doing that now, right?
I'm doing it and I'm still doing it.
And tell me, you have a wife, you have kids. How does that look?
Yeah, I have a wife and a son. I had a wife and a son even when we were house hacking in Las Vegas as well. And so we bought a one half of a 3-story townhome in North Carolina, Carolina Beach, North Carolina, right across the street from the beach. We literally I can walk out my front door and be at the beach in 20 seconds. And the bottom, it was 3 stories. It was a 5-bedroom, 4-bath, but the bottom level had its own entrance. And we just converted that to its own little apartment. And it's a 1-bedroom. It was 2-bedroom and a bathroom. We converted it. We opened up a wall and just converted it into one big kind of 1-bedroom suite with a little living room and a little kitchenette, and a bathroom. And it has its own separate entrance, outdoor shower. And we rent that out as a short-term rental, and it pays our mortgage.
Wow.
We couldn't afford to live there if we didn't. And I think where so many people are stretched so thin right now is with housing.
Yes.
And I say so many people are focused on eliminating the wrong expenses. They focus on the lattes and the eating out, which, yeah, you should control. But most people are getting their teeth kicked in by the cost of housing and car payments. So my first piece of advice is do not buy a car. Do not buy a new car. Don't buy a car on a loan. Find a way to just buy the cheapest car that's going to get you where you need to go, for cash. It's a depreciating asset. It's become culturally, people think I've got a good job. Now I deserve a nice car. And it is an anchor around your financial future. So that's my first piece of advice. And 2 is figure out how to house hack. And even families can do this. A lot of communities right now are become a lot more open to the idea of ADUs, Wilmington specific auxiliary dwelling units. You can take out a HELOC on the home you live on, add an accessory dwelling unit to your property that you can then rent out. And now you have dramatically, it's a lot, most people are paying 30% of their income for their housing. What are the chances you're going to get a 30% raise on your W-2 job in the next 2 years? Slim to none, unless you're in a really high growth industry and you're a rock star. But if you can eliminate or lower 30% of your expenses by house hacking, by just treating your home as asset, that's the way to go. And that changed the course of my financial future. We weren't getting ahead. We were I was saving 10% a year until we started house hacking that house in Vegas, and it totally changed our life. So that's my biggest piece of advice. The other one is taxes. Figure out how to play the tax game. The three biggest expenses in most people's lives are housing, car payments, and taxes. If you can figure out how to play the tax advantage game, if you're listening to this, you're probably a real estate investor, and there's a lot of levers you can pull there. That's really the way to get ahead these days.
I love all that. And I can remember when we were flipping properties in Durham, North Carolina, and for a while they didn't allow ADUs, and they lifted it, probably about 2019, probably 2019. And so at that point, all of the contractors in the area were just whatever they were building, they're building ADUs in the back as well. And, it's a concept also. I have students in California where the value of the house is also, you can put an ADU in the back. And so it's wild how this has just really blown up. So thank you for sharing that. And before we move to the second part of the podcast here, which is what makes Neil Henderson a badass, looking back on your journey, is there a lesson that you wish you would have learned sooner in your whole real estate journey?
Well, the obvious one is I wish I would have bought more real estate. I wish that I would have not let fear of getting started get in my way the way it did.
Can you say that louder for the people in the back, please?
Yeah. So risk is a muscle, and it is, I was fortunate enough to partner with a man, Eric Hemingway, who had a very well-developed risk muscle. And he didn't start off that way. Eric didn't start off buying 100,000 square foot Kmart's. He didn't start off building 50,000 square feet self-storage facility. He started small, and it's in the same way that you can, the way you go into a gym, you're not going to start off bench pressing 250 pounds. You're going to go in, you're going to lift light, you're going to do something that's, do it in a way that's not going to hurt you. It's not going to, permanently injure you. And that's the same thing you need to do with real estate. Find a way to get in for a small amount to just test that risk muscle. I did it by, I sort of fell into doing Airbnb, and learned along the way, made mistakes, but none of them were catastrophic. I then bought a BRRRR that was like $60,000. I had a bunch of equity in my home at the time and used a HELOC. Partnered with had a friend who had a great contractor in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and was able to buy that. And it was scary. Like, you take on a HELOC, let's say, I think I utilized about 100,000 of it, and you're like, oh God, okay, at the end of this, I'm going to put permanent debt on it and a tenant, and I'm going to get all that money back, and then it's going to be positive cash flow. That was a gut check. But that then made it a lot more, when it came time to buy over a much more expensive home in North Carolina that I was going to house hack. That risk muscle was well developed. I was confident that I could do it. I was going to, I could get the loan, I could put down the down payment, I could rent it out and all that. And then, I joined a team of self-storage people who had done this before. And every time there's people ahead of us that are doing much bigger deals than we are. And we keep leveling up each year as well. And that's really, find a way to start small. And even if it's, loaning out $10,000 to a house flipper as a hard money loan, just like, okay, I did this. And I got the money back, and I earned, 2 points and, a percent a month, whatever it is, to recognize, oh, okay, I didn't lose my money. Or, what, if you do lose your money, it's just 10 grand, and hopefully that's not your entire life savings, or I don't recommend you do that, but just find a way to get started small and keep leveling up and get better. And you'll get bigger and bigger deals to eventually where, you're buying 171,000 square foot retail strip malls and converting half of it to self-storage. That's where we're at right now.
Well, I think that is excellent advice. Thank you so very much. And I would like to move to the second part of the podcast here, which is what makes Neil Henderson a badass. And I use the acronym BADASS. And the first letter is B for book. What's a book that's made a huge difference in your life?
I'd say Atomic Habits is by James Clear, is a book that I reread every year, because it just gives me a kind of a reset to see whether or not my daily habits are making a vote for who I said I wanted to be.
Very good. I have a book club meeting tonight, and I'm supposed to recommend books. I put in, it's just the ladies in the neighborhood, and I put Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm like, let me just see if they'll take this one, but that might be a good book too. I might throw that in there. Thank you for bringing that one up. All right. The first A in badass is for advice. You've given some great advice, but what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, Lord. I think I burned through all my advice. Best piece of advice I've ever gotten from a real estate investor is invest for cash flow.
Yes.
With long-term debt, and have adequate reserves. And if you can maintain all three of those, you will survive most mistakes or market downturns. Now, I will say the person who gave me that advice broke one of those rules and is now paying the price for it. So I think that's a that was probably the best real estate advice I've ever gotten.
And then do it by example to you of what not to do. So,
Yeah.
yes. All right. The D in badass is for drive. What drives you to be successful?
My son, my family, my wife and son. I grew up in an Air Force family. My dad was a 28-year career Air Force officer. When he retired in 1992, he did the math on the amount of time that he was away from his family during that career, and it was 10 years. And that hit me because I remember that my dad wasn't around a lot. Um, and so but we also took some amazing family trips, and those are the things that I remember that I treasure. And so experiences over things is something that drives me. And I try and remind my son, who's an 11-year-old and he doesn't quite get it yet, that you're going to remember the trips that we take a lot more than the gift that I gave you, that tchotchke, that thing that you want so desperately.
So well said. And I have a kind of side question here. Do you still do any photography?
I do. Although we just took a big family trip to New York City for Thanksgiving. We were there for it had been a bucket list trip for me. My sister lives on the Upper East Side, so we went up to New York City, and I took my big camera and I went out into Central Park with it, and I took about 4 photos, and I was just like not feeling it, and then I picked up my phone. The best camera that you have is the one you have with you.
Yep.
And phones have become so capable now that I just started taking photos with my camera phone. Now, the camera phone photos that I take are probably going to be better than most people's, just because I'm a photographer. I know how to frame and compose things, but it's just I still love it. And one of my most treasured possessions that I have right now, I have this is a pitch for this company, Aura Frames, Aura. They're digital photo frames. I've got one in my office and I've got one in my living room. And and there in my office, I get to every day I'm reminded of all of the things that I'm working for, because I get photos from my family. I get great photos that I've taken from big trips I've taken and things like that. So yes, I do. I'm still a photographer.
Well, you were bringing up your dad and everything, and I'm the daughter of a photographer who worked for the newspaper, Miami Herald and the Fort Lauderdale News Sun Sentinel. And I can remember, you're talking about experiences is what you're going to remember. I remember sitting in the dark room in our house and developing black and white photos and doing that. And he actually passed before digital came out. So it was,
Wow.
he would be mind blown by everything that can be done now. So
Yeah.
just a little reminiscing myself there. All right, going back to this acronym, the next A is for aspiration. I'm a big goal setter. So, what is a goal you are currently working on?
I want to build up either cash flowing assets or a nest egg that produces $1,000 a day for me, whether or not I get up out of bed or not.
Ooh, that is a
Um,
lofty goal. I love it.
it is. Um, and I think we're on our way there. We've got a long way to go, but we're well on our way there.
Very nice. All right, the first S in badass is for systems. What systems do you have in place to help you achieve success?
We operate our entire company on Gino Wickman's Traction, the entrepreneurial operating system. It has absolutely transformed our company, and I know several other companies that have implemented it as well. It's just fantastic. Highly recommend that book and that system.
That book is like a textbook that you just should treat it like you are in Gino Wickman School of Traction there. So thank you for bringing that up. Well, Neil, I could talk to you all day, but the final S in badass is for success. What does success mean to Neil Henderson?
Being able to do what I want when I want with who I want.
Love it.
I don't want to die with a bunch of things. I want to die with a bunch of pictures and experiences of things, of stuff that I did with the people that I love.
Well, I think that is a fabulous way to end, and I hope our paths cross someday. We are just about an hour and a half from each other. If the listeners want to ask to speak with you or want to invest with Nomad Capital, what's the best way for them to find you?
Well, if you're shy, you can go to nomadcapital.us and just look at us and look at what our company is up to. Or you can shoot me an email at Neil, Neil, spelled the non-sociopath way, at nomadcapital.us.
I love that you said that.
And hey, if there's any sociopathic Neils out there that spell it the wrong way, feel free to send me the hate mail.
Well, Neil, thank you so much for being here today. This has been fabulous. So again, thank you so much for being here today.
It's been a pleasure, Jen. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And that is all. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode. Now go out there and share your badassery. And don't forget, make it a great day. Take care. Bye-bye. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you for listening to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. If you need more badassery, you can follow Jen Josey by visiting therealjenjosey.com or become a member of RAIN by registering on rainmastermind.com.